Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anthony Lang, and today I'm going to be talking to you about a SDN NFV solution that we developed in South Africa to rapidly monetize enterprise services for service providers. So what I'll be covering today is the solution that we developed for rapid monetization of SDN. I'll tell you a bit more about the solution. I'll tell you about the research and development facility that we developed in South Africa built in South Africa to develop these solutions. I'll be doing a live demo, so wish me luck. And then I'll do a quick closing, and hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end. So what I want you to do is I want you to imagine a platform. If you're a service provider in Africa, I want you to imagine a platform that would allow you to deliver enterprise services using SDN NFV. I want you to be able to imagine that you can do it next week. Not only that, I want you to imagine that you can do it without having to upgrade the hardware in your network, without having to change it, without having to upgrade software. I want you to imagine doing it without having any vendor lock-in, and most importantly, to only pay for what you sell. So that's what I'm going to show you today. So the solution that we developed is based on the fact that the future of SDN is unpredictable. The only thing that I know for sure about SDN is that nobody knows where it's going to be in 12 to 18 months. So our strategy was based on the fact that we need to be able to adapt quickly, to take advantage of the technology that's available now, but also as new innovations become available, to be able to quickly take advantage of them. And to be able to do that without having to commit to any particular vendor, without being locked in, and wherever possible to use open source software. One of the things we realized while developing this solution is that the technical problems are difficult to solve, and I think we've done that. But they aren't only technical problems, they're also commercial problems. So we set out to solve those as well. What we've done is we've created a completely different pricing model. So the pricing model that we've created is based on a pay-as-you-sell model, where you only have to pay for what you sell. We try to introduce new billing models, so for example, instead of charging annually up front, or annually, you only pay monthly for the services that you actually use. What was really important to us as well is that the solution is low risk, and I think this is one of the biggest challenges with SDN at the moment. People understand that SDN is the future, but they're not sure which solution to back. So what we want to do is to remove those barriers to the introduction of SDN. And a few of the key things there that we saw we had to solve was to create an all-in-one solution. There's lots of different moving parts to combine them into a working solution. Wherever possible, to use open source software and to build it in such a way that as new technology becomes available, that you can take advantage of it. We needed to make sure to reduce the risk that the solution that we built is compliant to all the prevailing industry standards. So for example, ETSI Mano, so the solution we built is compliant to that. And very importantly, because this solution is going to be delivering business critical services for enterprise, we understand that it needed to be carrier class. So our heritage is doing solutions and support for carriers, and we have an existing support capability, and we're using that support and experience capability to support this solution as well. And I think the last one, and the most important one to me, is that everybody understands that SDN makes sense. Everybody understands that NFV makes sense. But it doesn't make sense if you can't get to market quickly. And what we said is we need to have a solution that can get up and running quickly and allow our service provider customers to start monetizing that solution as quickly as possible. So what we want to be able to do is to have a model where service providers can, within a matter of days, we're saying within 2 weeks, get up and running on this solution. And the way that we've done that is we've actually built a hosted version of what I'll be showing you now at our data center in Terraco. And with a simple physical connection and a BGP peering into our environment, you can start delivering white-labeled services, white-labeled enterprise services using SDN and NFV within a matter of days. What we then have is a roadmap to take you from this hosted solution into an on-site solution, and that's what I'll be showing you now. So the way that we did this is we made a significant investment into basically a research and development lab at our head office in Johannesburg. We decided to make the investment into this research and development facility and to also make it a customer-facing environment. So we invested significant resources, and we created a team of experts from our networking team, from our cloud team, and also from our open source development team. And we started developing solutions for SDN NFV. And basically what we focused on first was how we can enable our service providers to generate new revenues from new services as quickly as possible. And that's the demo that I'll be showing you in a couple of minutes if everything goes according to plan. And the idea of this is that SDN and NFV is rapidly evolving. We want to be able to continuously evaluate the latest technology that becomes available. And actually something that we've realized, because we have this capability, because we've made this investment, because we have this facility, we get early access to new technology from all the technology partners that we work with. I'm very proud to say that we have some equipment in our experience center in Johannesburg that is pre-production, stuff that isn't available in the rest of the world yet, and it gives us the opportunity to evaluate that technology, to develop solutions, and to give our service provider customers that immediate benefit from that technology, or very, very quick benefit from that technology. Like I said, we used open source software wherever possible. I'll explain to you why in a minute. And the idea was that we wanted to be as open as possible. So we are not locked into any particular vendor. Obviously, we've chosen some technology partners because we believe that they bring immediate benefit and help us monetize SDN services quickly, but we're completely open. So for example, in our VNF partner program at the moment, we have Juniper, we have Procera, Arbor, F5, but we're continuously evaluating new technologies as they become available. So to date, one thing that I realized about this is that SDN and NFV makes sense, OpenStack makes sense, but to combine these into a commercially supported carrier class environment is difficult. And we've really invested significant effort. Just this year, we've invested over 6,500 man hours already to develop the solution that I'm about to show you. And I'm proud to say that we developed it locally in South Africa. So let me show you what we've actually developed. And I'll be doing that by using a use case. And that use case is self-service virtual DPI. And the use case here is, I think it's a very common problem in Africa, where bandwidth is still very expensive. So most guys don't have as much bandwidth as they could possibly want. And what happens is that their perceived performance of that link that they buy from their service provider is bad. But in most cases, it's bad not because there's something wrong with the network. It's bad because the link is congested. So what happens is the enterprise in this case is unhappy with the service that they're getting from their service provider. But the reason is actually their own fault. So let me illustrate a bit more. So you have a very typical environment. So you have an enterprise that has a simple internet connection from a service provider. The problem that we have is in this enterprise, we have users that are doing legitimate work. So for example, using email on Office 365 or using Salesforce. But on the same network, you have guys that are downloading peer-to-peer movies. You have guys that are watching YouTube streams. And the problem is that these applications are very bandwidth hungry and they will congest the link. So the perceived performance from these guys is that there's something wrong with the network. And of course, they don't blame them, they blame the service provider. So what happens is the enterprise phones the service provider, tells them the experience on your network is really bad. The best the service provider can typically do is provide them with a graph that shows that the link is saturated. And what's the answer? To buy more bandwidth. So there's a couple of problems with that. The first one is, as soon as you upgrade the bandwidth, that bandwidth will just become consumed immediately again, because these are applications that will just use whatever bandwidth is available. And secondly, as soon as you give your customer the opportunity to upgrade his link, he'll start shopping around in the market, and you could potentially go to somebody who's providing now a cheaper service, so you could potentially lose your customer. So I think this is a very typical scenario in Africa, and like I said, it's because bandwidth here is still very expensive. So imagine if, when that enterprise phones your service provider help desk, instead of telling them that your link is saturated and you just need to upgrade your bandwidth, you could send them a link to a self-service portal where within 2 minutes they could spin themselves up an inline virtual DPI service. What that virtual DPI service will do is give that enterprise insight into the actual applications that are running on his link. So in this case, he can quickly see that his link is being saturated by file transfer, which is peer-to-peer. And not only can he see that, he can then apply a policy himself to block applications like BitTorrent and YouTube during business hours, and then giving these guys that are trying to do legitimate business a much better experience. So this is an awesome solution because not only have you made your customer happy again, but you've given him something that's a lot more than just connectivity. And we all know that connectivity has become a commodity. So if this guy now wants to go and shop around for another service, he's not just going to look for somebody who can provide him with an internet connection, he's going to look for somebody that can provide him with an internet connection with the intelligence of virtual DPI. So suddenly you've created stickiness with your customer as well. So I'm going to do a live demo of the use case that I've just described, so wish me luck. Okay. So exactly like this scenario that I just described, I'm an enterprise customer. I phone my service provider up and I tell them that I'm very unhappy with the service that they're providing me. They send me a link to the self-service portal. They give me a username and a password. I log in. And then I have the ability to provision myself a service from a catalog. For this demo, we have 2 services in the catalog. We have Juniper Virtual Firewall, and we have a Procera Virtual DPI. So for this demo, I'll be doing Virtual DPI. So all I have to do is give it a name and hit Create Appliance. And it's as simple as that. And it will take 2 minutes, and I'll have an inline Virtual DPI. So while that's going, I'm going to show you what's actually happening. So this is the scenario. I am the enterprise. I currently have internet connectivity through my service provider. If I want to be able to offer this enterprise my services, which are these SDN NFV services that I've just described, all I need to do, it's a very simple integration, is have a physical connection into my cloud environment, set up BGP peering into your network. So this is my cloud environment, and this is the existing service provider network. So critically, what's important to understand here is that this existing network doesn't need to have any changes, no software changes, no hardware changes, no upgrades. As long as this existing network can run IP/MPLS, Layer 3 VPN, and BGP, then you can do this integration. And I've shown you the config here, how simple it is on a Juniper device. So assuming that your peering device or your first peering device is a Juniper, I just need to set up 2 BGP peers, for those of you who are technical, and a GRE tunnel. And that's the only config that I need to be able to do this. Once I've got that config in place, I can now enable this enterprise customer through the portal that I've just shown you to provision a service. What happens then is, using BGP, I can inject a new default route into a guy's Layer 3 VPN, and by doing that, I can attract the traffic into my cloud environment. I can then take that traffic into the virtual DPI, and similarly from the out interface of the virtual DPI, I can drop that traffic back into an internet VRF, and similarly in reverse. So I'll advertise the customer subnets out into the internet VRF with a preferred metric, and thereby attract the traffic into the virtual DPI. So without making any config changes into this network, just using traditional Layer 3 VPN technology by injecting a route, I can dynamically insert a virtual DPI into the path of this customer's traffic. So as he surfs the internet, the traffic, instead of going directly, now goes through the virtual DPI that I've just provisioned. And obviously the demo that I just showed you there was BitTorrent traffic would now be identified within the Procera Virtual DPI, and it would be blocked. Whereas Office 365, for example, would be permitted. So this is just a very high-level overview of the platform that we've developed. So like I said, we're basing it on open source software. So the foundation of the solution is based on OpenStack for the compute and storage and automation of that. For the networking piece, we're using Juniper's Contrail. And the reason we're using Juniper Contrail, the main reason at the moment, is because it gives us that overlay ability to be able to dynamically provision connectivity between the VNF that we spun up and the existing network. So let me do a quick workflow for you here. Okay, so OpenStack and Contrail are very powerful, and they're very important building blocks for automation. But the thing is, they don't give you the orchestration piece. So what we decided to do was actually develop our own orchestration platform, a very lightweight platform that enables this very rapid deployment of these services. So that framework we've developed locally in South Africa, we've called it Atom. And on top of that framework, we've developed a very simple self-service portal, which I showed you now. And we've also developed an admin portal. So the idea is that the complexity actually sits in the orchestration layer, not actually in the self-service portal, because we understand that most service providers have the existing portal, and all you need to do is a very simple API call into the framework, and that does all the magic for you. So let me run you through a quick example. So the way that it would work is a service provider through an admin portal would create the customers that they want to sell the service to. And simply all you need to do is enter the VRF target, and the customer name. It's as simple as that. The customer then gets an email, they can log into a portal. From that portal, they can choose services. So for example, I've just chosen the virtual DPI service, and then the Atom framework takes care of all the complexity. Using OpenStack, it creates the virtual machine with the correct specs, it loads the image, it boots the image up, it then configures that image correctly, then it instructs Contrail to create the necessary MPLS over GRE tunnels to link that virtual machine that I've just created into the customer's network. And lastly, and very importantly, it sends a transaction to billing. And we've made this as simple as possible. So you can literally get up and running with an email system. So once the customer provisions this, it can send an email literally to say, customer XYZ has just bought this service, charge him that at the end of the month. Obviously, we also have APIs into billing systems to automate this completely, but the idea was to try and get to market as quickly as possible. So if everything went according to plan, it's a moment of truth. So now, back to the demo. So if I'm the enterprise, so now I've spun up my virtual DPI. On the portal, I'll have a link to go and configure it. So basically, I can log into this portal. So what this portal shows me is, as I showed you earlier, the actual traffic that's running on my link. So this is some dummy traffic, but it's a very typical scenario where we have, obviously, the majority of the bandwidth is consumed by peer-to-peer. So at the moment, I can get some interesting reports, but there's no policies applied. So I want to show you that, to prove that to you by launching a torrent quickly. So at the moment, there's no policies applied, which basically means I can download this torrent as fast as I want. And this is exactly the problem. So now the link will become congested with this torrent. So what I'll do then, as the administrator for the enterprise, is go back to my Procera virtual DPI portal. I can then apply a blocking policy. So let me load the demo policy here. So basically what I'm presented with is a very simple table. And it shows me a list of common applications and times of day. So for example, midnight to 6 a.m., 6 till 12, 12 till 6, and 6 till midnight. And simply by clicking on one of these tick boxes, I can enable or disable that application. So in this case, I want to block peer-to-peer during business hours. So all I need to do is literally click on the tick boxes. And by doing that, I've blocked peer-to-peer. I can also integrate this into Active Directory, so I can apply it to specific users if I want to, but in this case, I'll apply it to everybody. And then you can see almost instantly the BitTorrent is rate limited and starts to decrease in bandwidth. So the example that I've just showed you there is for completely blocking traffic. But you can also, for example, do volume-based policies where instead of blocking the application completely, you could allow a certain amount of traffic per day. So you can, for example, allow peer-to-peer, but only allow 100 meg per user per day. And similarly, you can also apply a speed policy, so you can allow peer-to-peer, but for example, only allow it at 1 megabits per second. And all of this can be done by the enterprise themselves, so typically by the enterprise administrator, and all of this without having to interact with the service provider at all. So just to recap, the use case that we had there is you have an enterprise. They have a problem with the user that's using BitTorrent. Through a very simple self-service portal, I was able to create my own virtual DPI. On that virtual DPI, I was then able to identify that peer-to-peer was a problem, and I was able to block it during business hours. And within a matter of minutes, I've solved my business problem, and I've given the guys that are actually trying to do legitimate work a much better experience. So just to recap, what we've developed is an all-in-one solution for SDN, NFV, and it's targeted at service providers to give them a portfolio of network-based services that they can offer to their customers literally within days. The idea is that we want to be able to generate new revenues for our customers, and our customers being the service providers. Obviously, SDN has a lot of potential, but we wanted to focus on generating new revenues as quickly as possible. We understood that the way to do that was to develop an overlay solution, which wasn't dependent on any particular hardware or requiring any kind of hardware changes. And we developed some new commercial models because we understood that the traditional commercial models don't work. So for example, our cost of sale is now very low. Customers can self-service themselves new services. And what this enables is a completely new commercial model. So for example, you can now give your customer a virtual DPI for the first month for free. So imagine you're a service provider, you get a call from your customer, you can tell them, for the first month I'll give you the virtual DPI for free. If they see the value in it, they can then every month, if they see the value in it, which I'm sure they will just pay monthly for it in addition to their existing connectivity. So not only have you solved the customer's problem, but you've also generated a new revenue stream. We understood that one of the biggest challenges is to deploy this environment, so we've created a hosted solution, which is in our Terrico data center, and we plan to, in South Africa. We also plan to build a hosted solution in East and West Africa. And obviously we've developed it in such a way that we can quickly and easily deploy this into an existing service provider environment as well. And I think lastly, and the most important point, is that we developed this solution to be as open as possible. And the reason for that is that we want to remove the barriers to market, and one of those is being afraid to choose the wrong solution. So we made sure that whatever we do, there's absolutely no risk of lock-in. So like I said, we've made this huge investment in this experience center. We're very excited about it. It's at our head office in Johannesburg, and we absolutely welcome anybody to come and see the experience center. I'll be standing at the NEC booth for the rest of today and tomorrow, so by all means come and visit me and schedule an appointment. We also have video conferencing and remote access capability, so if you're not able to visit us in Johannesburg, we can still do a demo for you. We can do it remotely. So please, otherwise you can email me. My email address is anthony@XON, and I welcome all of you to come and schedule an appointment for our experience center. So I think we have a couple of minutes left. I'm happy to take some questions if there are any. Sure. So the question is, do you have to be a service provider to use this solution? So the simple answer is no. So this solution could be used, you could technically deploy this for yourself, but the real value in this platform is to be able, the real value in this solution is to have a single platform that can deliver multiple services. So the business case makes a lot of sense for service providers, but absolutely there's no reason why you couldn't potentially use this as well, and that's why we developed it as a hosted solution. Cool, if there's no other questions, then I'd like to say thanks a lot for the demo. Hopefully you guys found it interesting. If you have any other questions, feel free to come and see me. I'll be standing at the NEC stand. Thanks a lot.